Hi, I'm Justin Schultz, aka Bad Bart for the Quilt Show on the Crowd Wrangler. Behind me, people are already lining up for today's episode. You won't want to miss it, so don't click that mouse.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Anderson and Ricky Tim.
Thank you, everybody. Woo-hoo. I love having them here. Thank you, everyone. We sure appreciate you all coming, and we appreciate all of you out there that are watching at home today. You know, Alex, we love quilting. That's what this show is all about. And a lot of times people think about their quilting designs and their fabric and their color and the piecing and the applique, and they get all excited about that. And then they realize it's done.
And now what?
And then they have to quilt the dang thing.
Right,
It's
and so
like,
they ship it off or whatever.
right, well, then that's okay.
Right.
But one of the things that I think about, I call it the chasm. There's this big gap between finishing the quilt and jumping over here onto the side of quilting the quilt. And one of the things to me, is the problem is you're not thinking about the quilting while you're making the quilt top. And if you would put that into the mix,
Right.
then that chasm is going to squish together a little bit.
And or if you finish the quilt and you don't know what to do, it doesn't have to be done tomorrow. You can live with it and then decide what to do.
Isn't that a novel idea?
Really?
That's great. Now, I do mostly machine quilting, and Alex, you're a
Pretty much,
tremendous
yeah, hand quilter. Though I am getting my hands wrapped around machine quilting very well. Not as good as you.
Well, it's all right. We're all in the learning curve, right?
Right.
And I started learning hand quilting from Joe Cunningham, who has been a guest on our show before. And he taught me to use a thimble and so forth and to do the rocking stitch. And I can do it one direction. I can do it fairly well in one direction, but I understand that you can do it with your thumb going away from you.
Exactly. When I learned how to hand quilt, I quilted on a frame, so I couldn't turn it around like how beginners can on a hoop, right? You can just
Okay.
constantly move the hoop. Most people put their thimble on their middle finger. I happen to put it on my pointer finger. That's how I quilt towards myself.
Really?
All right? Yeah.
So you're,
But,
show us.
well, no.
I want a
okay,
visual.
normally I go like this, okay? But
Okay,
I
but-
can also quilt away from myself.
Wow.
And in fact, I like quilting with the thimble on my thumb perhaps more than my pointer finger because it is a stronger limb than your pointer or your middle. Now, when you are going to quilt away from yourself, you want to get a thimble with really good dents on the side, not on the end. Some people like thimbles with a really good, place on the end.
I do.
Yeah, well, that's
I
because
do.
you're using your middle
I'm
finger.
using my middle finger, absolutely.
Correct, and so this is how I do it away. First of all, I want to say that when you thread your needle in hand quilting, you don't want your thread to be more than 18 inches. Did you know that?
No, so 19 is not good.
No,
Okay, I'll be real
no,
careful
no,
not to
no,
have
no.
19 inches or
Right.
18.
And the reason is because that eliminates breakage.
I understand.
Some people would like do a yard of string.
well, and it starts wearing out with all of
Exactly.
the tugging. So.
And then I always knot the thread before I clip it.
Okay.
Because thread has a wrap to it. And if you knot the wrong end, you'll get knots.
Okay, now this is the thing I've heard. You've all heard this, right? Tell me it's true. It's not a wives' tale. It's true. It has a wrap, and you don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
thought you were going to make up some story.
No, I wanted you to tell me this is true.
No, this is true.
All right.
Okay, so how I make my quilter's knot is I simply make an O around my fingers like this, and then I bring my little needle through, and there's my little knot right there. Okay, now,
That's enough of a knot.
yeah,
You-
and now I snip it.
I'd be pulling that knot right through. I know.
I know, I saw that the other day when you were playing around with Judith.
That's right.
So anyways, I'm going to put the thimble on my thumb. I want to make sure we get positioned here, all
Okay.
right?
Am I hovering over too close?
No, I don't think so. And
Do I stink today?
no.
It's just hot in the studio. You're hot, aren't you? It's hot in the studio. I took a shower, Alex.
Okay, so now you made me all nervous, and I'm going to pop that knot through right there. Now, it would be marked ordinarily, but we're just going to do some fun quilting here.
Okay.
I pick up the needle like this, and I think perhaps working with your thumb, the hardest part is for people to get used to picking up the needle with the finger with their thimble.
Oh,
all
sure,
right?
yeah, sure.
Now you've got 3 players when you hand quilt. You have your finger underneath, you have your thimble finger, and you have your finger in front. And this is no matter what direction you're quilting.
Okay.
So I'm going to make a hill underneath. In fact, you can see that there.
I can see that, yep.
It's this side of my finger right here.
Yep.
And I'm going to come straight down into it. I'm not going to jab myself or anything like that. And then I'm going to pivot back and push down in front. And there's my first little stitch.
Now,
okay?
I've been told that when you go down,
do it again.
when you do it, as you feel that needle come through and it touches your underneath finger, that's when you pivot, right?
Yes. And then I make hills and valleys.
Look at
Oh, but look
this.
at now, I'm all sweaty and I'm making
I
big
know, 'cause
stitches.
it's hot in here.
Yeah. I will tell you
We didn't
this.
talk about whether you stunk or not. I'm sorry, I'm being very bad today, aren't I?
Can I tell you a secret?
You know what? I just
Can I tell
don't-
you a secret?
Yes, you may.
The other day I was at church and I'm like going, ooh, somebody really smells.
Was it you? Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Thanks for sharing.
You're welcome. We're family here.
That's
Now,
right.
you know, the other thing too, did you know it's easier to quilt on the bias than on the straight of grain?
I do know that. I mean, I didn't really fully know that, but I suddenly realized at one time in my life that it was just easier to go on that bias because there's more give in the fabric.
Right. So that's it. Okay, let's pretend
Oh, but
that
let's not pretend yet. Let's look
you
at
see
that.
that?
Look at that. It's nice. Get in there and get
Yeah.
those. Okay. That's great.
Now, in order to finish it, let's say we're at the end of the thread, you know, I would do a little, let me take off this, a little French knot. Can you see that?
Wrap around.
Yeah, okay. And then we are getting intimate here, me and the camera. And then I just go like that, and then there's that little knot. And then I go between the layers. Thanks, Erin, that's perfect. And I just come up, pop the knot in place.
All right.
Excellent.
Now, this obviously takes a little bit of practice. I tell everyone, with anything that you do in life, it takes a little bit of getting used to.
Oh.
And once you're used to it, it's like you can't live
20
without.
hours.
Look
20
who's-
hours.
this-
Like you need some help.
I do. Who's here? It's Gizmo,
It's Gizmo Girl. Cheryl Uribe. How do you do?
Hello.
How are you?
I thought you needed some help. It looks like you need to trim some thread.
Yeah, and I'm always afraid that I'm going to cut a hole in it.
Be careful.
I know. That's when you learn to applicate.
Well, you're
Yeah.
going to teach
Better
me
yet.
that. I've got these 3-in-1 snippers,
Let me see these. Who are these by?
superior threads.
Yeah.
They're made in Japan, great quality.
them right down
It's
here.
a 3-in-1 tool though, so I'm going to show you the different things it can do.
Cool.
Okay, what does it do?
So the first thing, can we snip your thread?
Yeah, be my guest.
Okay.
I'll hold the thread.
So you just need to, there's a little groove in there.
No chance.
Oh,
no
nice.
chance
As long as
of
you hold it
cutting.
at the right angle, you're not going to
That is awesome.
risk cutting your quilt top.
Okay, that's
Okay.
number
Yeah.
one. What's
Yeah.
number two?
So the number 2 is it is also a seam ripper. Can I tear out your stitches?
Ooh, she's my best friend. She can do that.
Oh,
Now you're
the
getting
big
all
one.
nervous too, yeah.
Okay.
We're all getting to
Look
where
at
we-
that.
There you
Cut
go.
Nice.
Alex Anderson's
Nice.
hand quilting. So it not only does it do that, but also the tip of this, you can see how sharp it is and pointy. You can use the tip of it as an awl. So you know how when you're maybe piecing on your machine,
Or
you're
like
going
a-
along,
Oh, like
you
a
wanna-
stiletto?
A stiletto.
Yeah.
You can line it up and just kind of guide your piecing right through your
That's
machine.
great.
You know
Isn't it
what?
great?
Yes,
Feel 'em.
I want
And-
one of these. And who's this by again?
Superior threads.
3-in-1.
Isn't it wonderful?
snipper.
I
I love this.
That's
What do you
great.
guys think? Yeah?
cool?
Yeah.
I like it too because you don't have to have a lot of things around.
Right.
It does them all themselves.
What I want to know,
All
and this is
itself.
because sometimes we give stuff away. Is that a giveaway, or is it just you got to go out and buy it?
For our audience?
Have they been nice enough
Pretty
to you
nice today.
Please open this.
Yeah, but guess what? This one's going home with Mama. Okay, next.
Perks of the job. You deserve it.
not-
Only
See
on
that.
the web. Only on the web. All right, what do you have next,
Okay, now I
girlfriend?
know you use this pencil to mark.
Yeah, for
your-
hand
for your
quilting, I
quilting?
use a silver Verity.
Okay, when I do machine quilting, I like to use this washable blue pen. Everyone's probably seen them.
The mark be gone.
But I want to show it to you again because there are rumors out there that some people.
Oh, they
some
think the
quilters,
blue doesn't come
they're
out?
afraid to use it.
I've never, ever not had the blue come out. But
I've
there's a trick.
Come across a couple that it hasn't. The trick is when you're done quilting and you're finished with your quilt, to immerse it in water. Don't just spray it. Don't just dab it with water with a Q-tip or anything. You want to immerse it and let it soak for a good 5 minutes at least. Then you're going to make sure that all of the blue ink is completely gone.
I use those all the time.
I love them.
Well, and obviously,
by Dritz.
obviously, without saying it too much, you're going to have to wet the quilt. So if you're not willing to wet the quilt,
Don't use it.
Well,
use
and I
this.
block my quilts too, so I usually wet it
I do
for that
too.
anyway.
I do
so,
too.
and that's by Dritz.
Do they get one?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I love this. Do you ever increase or decrease the size of your patterns or want to?
Yes. In fact, I think one of the most valuable tools a quilter can have is a copy machine that increases and decreases.
Okay, good, because this is what this is about. Okay, this is by Golden Threads, and it's called a proportional scale. And what it does is, it's a guide to tell you how much to increase or decrease the percentage on your copy machine
when you're making a copy.
when you're making a copy big or little.
So how does it work?
Okay, so on the inside numbers is the size you're starting with. So for example, I've got a 6-inch we're starting with.
Okay.
So you're gonna find the 6-inch on here, which is right here. And we're gonna pretend I wanna increase it an inch to 7 inches. So all I do is rotate the wheel to 7 and line it up. And in this window up here, there's an arrow, and it tells me that I need to increase it 118%. So I just punch that in my copy machine,
That's cool.
and here's the larger 7-inch size.
So right here it is, done 7 inches.
you don't have
and
to think about it.
Don't have to think about it. I always like to go
It's
through
great.
10 pieces of paper just to get the right size. That'll save a lot of time, right?
Why do you think I found this?
Yeah.
And
It goes
likewise,
the opposite way?
likewise, if you want to make it smaller, let's go down an inch. Let's make it 5 inches. So we started with 6, we're lining it up with 5. In the window it says 83%. I punched in 83% on the copy machine.
And boom,
There's
there
the
you
5-inch.
Okay, I like this too.
She's-
I like this stuff.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Cheryl Uribe, Gizmo Girl. Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
So what's coming up today, Ricky?
You know what we've got today? We've got Cindy Needham, wonderful vintage textiles and turning them into quilts. Don't go away. We are having a lot of fun today. I know that Alex and I, we banter a little bit, but it's all in good fun. At the end, we were so excited about what Gizmo Girl was giving away that we forgot to say that the proportional scale from Golden Threads is going home with every one of
All
you
of you.
too. All right?
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about today's show. We have Cindy Needham here, and she's written this book, Whole Cloth Linen Quilts, and they're just exquisite. Please welcome Cindy Needham. Welcome.
Hi, Miss Cindy. Welcome. We're glad that you're here. You've got some wonderful innovation going on that actually goes back a long way.
Long time.
Sounds almost like oxymoron, innovation and way back when.
It kind of gave me an excuse to buy more linens.
Well, have you been a linen collector for a long time?
I have, for about 20 years.
And what did you do before you started this whole thing of what you're doing now?
I was a hand quilter. I hand quilted for about 25 years.
Yes.
And then I turned to machine quilting about 12 to 13 years ago. And a friend of mine started me on linens, and it's just like going to the fabric store and you're buying fabric that you love but you don't really need.
Yes.
And that you sneak in the house and dive under the cupboard. Well, I did the same thing with my linens. It just became an obsession. And I would had a little dresser drawer, and I had little boxes.
And
then
it suddenly was 2 dresser drawers and 3 boxes and 2 closets
my
and a
husband is
cedar
a
chest.
cabinet maker, and he has built me a whole wall of garage cabinets.
Oh,
to
let's
hold
hear it
my
for the
linens.
husband.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for the husband.
So yeah,
That's
it's
good.
totally out of control. So I
That's
had
great.
to figure out a way to justify the purchases. I had to do something.
The
with them.
producers told us that you quit your day job a year ago.
I did. It was a leap of faith, basically. After losing my mother last year, and I've been working in medicine, about 22 years.
And what did you do?
I worked in surgery, I've done medical transcription, I've done bookkeeping, the whole shebang.
But what you gave up to do now is do basically quilting and teaching full-time and talking about these wonderful vintage linens.
Absolutely.
And how you use them in quilts, and
Yes.
you're traveling around
And
doing
it was time to do it.
Well, we just need to encourage Quilt Girls. Since you're kind of a new kid on the block, I bet they could probably get you at their guilds, so y'all need to think about that.
And I would love
Her
to go.
bags are packed and ready to go, right?
Yes,
Great.
we are.
Well, if you were to go to a guild and you were going to teach the class, you would probably encourage them to come with a linen to work with, right?
Yes, that's what I teach in my workshop.
And then, like, is this a typical linen somebody might come with?
Typical linen, typical tablecloth.
Wow.
And you can buy these, people have them in their cedar chests, they have them in dresser drawers. Auntie gave them some, Grandma gave them some.
Okay.
You can find them at garage sales.
Let's poll the audience. How many of you have old linens at home? Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
everybody,
Point
That's
made.
good.
everybody.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look at what you have here because I think the
Okay.
pieces are just extraordinary. What was this first quilt? It looks
This-
like a quilt top that
It's
wasn't
a
finished.
very basic daybed cover. And I found it at one of the quilt shows. One of the vendors had it. I got it for $20. And I paid for it and ran before they realized I robbed them.
And did you finish it? Did you quilt it?
I quilted it.
Okay.
Most of these you don't see them quilted. They're all unfinished. But I marked it and quilted it, and it just came out fabulous.
And this is machine work, you say?
Machine work, and I do all my quilt on a domestic machine. And the one thing that people don't realize, and they won't until they start doing it, is that these pieces have a history. And there's a magic, and there's something different when you put a pieced quilt through the machine with new fabric. But when you have something like this that has a history, somebody else has spent hours on this, and you quilt it and you give it a new life, it's a whole different feeling. It's very cool.
Well, the red work piece you have there has caught my eye because I do like red work.
I know.
Yes, yes.
The red work piece I found on my very first trip to Houston. They have fabulous linen vendors at Houston, and this was one of 2 pillow coverings, and it's vintage French red work. Never seen anything like it. And I put it in the machine and quilted around all the embroidery, and it just gives it a whole new life. It shows it off.
This is, looking at the red work, people will write to me and say, how do I quilt my red work? And I say crosshatch grid or whatever. I'm not thinking big enough, am I?
No, you need to get out of your box.
Exactly. Now next to it, this beautiful white on white quilt, but wait, there's more, right? What is that linen?
Okay, this is drawn thread work, and of all the linens, drawn thread work is my favoriteest. It's so intricate and there's so much into it. I made this piece for the last Road to California show for 2008, and this is dedicated to my mom. I lost her last year, and this was my therapy getting through that. And it's just all white. Because of the openness under the drawn thread work, I layered it on top of another beige antique linen.
Wow.
Quilted it.
Do you ever give these names? Like,
Yes.
Does this quilt have, what is the name?
This one is just simply remembering mom.
Wow, sweet.
So
So you layer linen upon linen.
I do if it has open areas.
What do you do if a student comes in with a linen that, say, has been made overseas and it's not old and they think they have something old?
If they're proud of it, you go with it and you make it good. Absolutely, because it's their treasure.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's old or new, they love it. Absolutely.
That's a good way to think about it. The next quilt with the yellow edges?
The next quilt, that was my commemorative quilt for the road show in '08. And this is a piece that I got off of eBay. I got a lot of 4 beautiful linens for $30.
Is that a good resource?
Oh yeah.
eBay?
eBay's
But she doesn't
wonderful.
want to share that with
Oh,
anybody.
Oh, it's out now.
You
It's a
didn't hear
secret.
that.
Don't
You
tell.
didn't hear that. So close your ears.
Because of the extensive open areas, I decided to lay this on top of another linen, and I chose yellow because it's soft enough, it shows off the designs without overpowering the linen. And then I've gone through, I'm on about my 400th or 500th freshwater pearl that I'm still doing all the embellishing on and playing with that. But you want to show them off just a little bit.
That looks like it could be a prize winner in my book.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. And then the beige one.
The beige one is probably my most special and my most sentimental. The name of this quilt is Remembering Sharon. When I started teaching at Honey Wren Quilters in Chico, California, they gave me my start. And the shop owner, Sharon Berg, we called each other kindred spirits because we both loved the linens. We thought we were born in the wrong era. And she left that linen, the middle part of it, right on the classroom table before a class one day with a sketch of what she wanted me to do. and a week later she passed away. And it took me almost 2 years before I could finally take that out and work on it, and it was my therapy getting through that, quilting that for her, and it's one of my most treasured possessions.
I would say that would be a major, major treasure.
It is, yeah.
You know, it makes me think, so many people think that quilts are blankets or whatever, but if they could just tell the stories.
Exactly, exactly. And that's one of my sayings, or what I like to say, is that the quilts have stories, and especially the linens, and you just have to be a good listener.
And you document your quilts on the back.
Yes, I do. And what I've done on the backs, and I'll show some of those during the demos, I like to use the parts and pieces. I use pillowcases and old lace for the rod pockets, but I use coaster-sized linens, and if it's a good story, a bad story, happy thing, bad thing, I always document it on the back. So if people were to take all my quilts and line them up one after the other, it would tell my story.
That's really cool.
Which is cool.
Okay, I get the show today.
You do. You do.
Okay, I get the show. So coming up next, we'll play with Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Needham. I'm getting ready for the show this afternoon, and I'm going to show you some wonderful things that you can do with your old linens, so don't go away.
Ricky, I know you do quilted bobbin work.
I do. Actually, I use the Ricky Tim's Razzle Dazzle thread, but you could use any sparkly thread. I love that Superior thread that they've let us use some decorative thread. But when I do that, I have to put it in the bobbin, and then I have to loosen the tension a little bit. On my Bernina, it's a push-in, pull-out bobbin, so I can just loosen that screw maybe a quarter or half a turn, and it works. And when I'm done, I just tighten it right back up.
Or you can buy 2 bobbin cases.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and which wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah.
And what I do, and which is a simple solution to mark the quilt before you do the bobbin work, is from the front side with regular thread, just outline your blocks, or you could use water-soluble thread if you're going to wet your quilt afterwards. You mark the area, turn the quilt upside down, and now you know exactly where to do your quilting with your bobbin thread.
I think I'm going to try that. We're here with Cindy Needham, and the treasure hunt has started for antique pieces that we can do whole cloth quilts with, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You've brought so many wonderful things. I think we need to share with everyone what the possibilities are.
And these are linens that are available to anybody. This is a whole new medium for quilters, which is fabulous. They're not just limited to the quilt store anymore. They can go into grandma's attic, they can go into the cedar chest. These are a dime a dozen. Typical embroidered tablecloth.
This is screaming for quilting, wouldn't you say?
This is a white work dresser scarf. Everybody
has
scarves.
one of
Absolutely.
these, yes.
And don't be afraid of the edges. I'll show you how to take care of these edges
The little
too.
scalloped edges.
Absolutely.
Nice. All right. Now I have some of these with kitties on it. They're so cute.
And they're wonderful. And on some of these linens, you'll see that they have little stains or they might have holes. That's the charm factor.
I like that.
It's the history of the piece. And if the stains don't come out, it's no big deal. It's part of the history.
Okay.
So you're getting the chance to not be so perfect anymore.
And that's what we tell ourselves as we get older too, right?
Absolutely. It totally works. Pillowcases.
Pillowcases.
This is also a good example of charm. We've got some stain on the pillowcase. It's got the patina, and it's wonderful. So there's some wonderful things that we can do with the pillowcases too.
What do you launder them with?
Quilt soap.
Okay. And you just say...
Just a very gentle soap,
right.
gentle cycle. This is a really pretty piece of red work. This is a pillow covering, not a pillow sham. Red work, drawn thread work are my 2 most favorite linens in the world, and this is screaming to be quilted.
And I heard, now I don't know if this is true or not, and of course this is how rumors get started, that they actually covered their pillows with these to keep the dirt off.
Absolutely.
So
That's true.
I have some of those too, and I love them. But now we're getting into children's clothing?
Yes, and I've had so many students in workshops that have had baptismal gowns, baby dresses, all tucked away and never know what to do with them. And now I've got a special way that you can display them.
I have my mom's, and that's just wonderful.
Exactly.
And then we get down to handmade laces.
And there's lots of lace. It can be wide, it can be narrow, it can be decorative, but this is what you can use for your rod pockets for the back of the quilt.
Oh, you're killing me, really?
Yeah, and then you can also use it for borders on your quilts.
Okay, that works better.
Absolutely.
In my book. All right, now we have here some more things to talk about. You've brought so many wonderful things.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, now this is what you get to do with them after you found them. This is a dresser scarf. And this is something that I turned into a piece for my home quilt store, Honey Run Quilters.
And
out
you're
of
Chico, California,
Chico,
yes.
California. So this was my thank you to them for getting me started. This is a pillowcase.
I want to make sure. I can't even tell the right side from the wrong side.
This is the pillowcase.
pull
This
this
is the
out.
bottom end of it. And I have left that open, and I only quilted up to the decorative end that was here, which was very cool.
Are
And
you just loving this?
the back of it is a rod pocket. This is a half
Yeah.
of a doily. The top part was all damaged, cut it off. And this is what I'm going to hang the pillowcase with on my wall.
You know, I have to tell you, I have shamefully gotten rid of some linens, and I hope they ended up in your house.
This is a good example of what you can do with that baby dress I showed you. And this was not a special piece when I bought it. I got it from an antique store. And all I did was this is when I was a hand quilter.
I say, I want people to understand this is hand
Yeah,
quilted.
a long time ago.
Right, right.
But I hand quilted this piece and simply tacked the dress down to the piece. I added the bead embellishment to add a little bit of sparkle. And I signed this one on the front because
Okay.
this was a very special one and it had a special message in it for me and I needed to remember that. But that's one of my special ones.
All right.
Okay, so you've gotten your treasure hunt done and you have a lot of pieces that have charm.
Look at the lady on this. I mean,
Isn't that gorgeous? And this is a pillowcase, a pillow
Really?
sham. But this shows before and after. I decided I wanted to try and clean this.
Okay.
And I have a special soap called Restoration Soap. And for the purpose of this show, I dunked half of it in the Restoration and half of it not, so you could see the difference.
And it's called Restoration Soap.
Restoration Soap.
And you get it at a quilt store, or where would you get
Some
this?
quilt stores are carrying it. I have found it online at Ingleside Products.
Okay.
Comes in a tub. It's fabulous for old linens. It's very gentle, doesn't damage them.
Beautiful. And look at that. That's just how we do it at my house. Like yours, I'm
Like my
sure.
you should see my house. So now that we have found our pieces, we know what we want to do with them. This is a typical tablecloth that we showed a little bit
Yes.
earlier. It was a perfect example. I recommend if your linen is very delicate, do not wash it first. It's a common sense thing because
Okay.
it might distort. Instead, you can take this. One thing that's very consistent about old linens is they are never, ever square.
Oh, they're not.
Not.
Like my quilts.
Like your mine too. That's why I do whole cloth quilts. I'm a terrible baster.
I don't enter contests.
Me neither. So we've got a lot in common.
Yes, we do.
So we take this linen that is unsquare, we fold it into quarters, and you can see right here how unsquare this is. Press it firmly. This marks the center of your quilt. All of your markings and designing are based off of these lines. Very important.
I think that's a really good tip that I would not have considered even in a whole cloth or anything, but that's it from the center out, right?
Exactly. Your center's always true.
Yeah.
So you always work from the center out. Now that you have your piece marked, I use stencils. I'm one of those people that loves to use stencils.
You love to design and sell them even more, don't you?
I do. And
Okay.
the cool thing about the stencils that I designed is I use my old linens for inspiration.
Okay.
All my designs are based off of my linens. So I just go ahead. So I take my stencils, I lay them down, mark, mark, mark. I always try to show off the personality of the piece. It's like when you're quilting a regular quilt, you want to show off the design.
I'm going to turn this around. So in other words, you don't just say, oh, I want to do X, Y, Z. You give it real thought.
Let it talk to you.
Like that.
Absolutely, because your quilting and your design is to show off what's already there. It's a blank canvas that's already started for you.
Okay, so now you've got your piece marked. Oh, and I want to note here that you are using a Mark Be Gone also, correct?
Yes, love that pen.
And again, you have to be willing to immerse it in water when it's
Clear,
over.
cold water, no soap. It has to be absolutely nothing in that.
Okay, so let's show everybody what you have here.
Okay, this is a technique that I came up with. I teach in all my workshops, and it's called straight basting, especially when you're dealing with a whole cloth quilt that you don't have straight piecing lines, that you're going to be ditching and laying out the quilt. So I take my walking foot, feed dogs up, old cotton thread, something you don't want. Large basting stitch. You start at the top raw edge of your piece in the center and go down.
Could you use water-soluble thread?
You couldn't. I haven't done that yet.
Okay, that's a tip from Ricky Timms. Got you covered, Ricky.
Thank you. You're about the 10th person that's told me that, and I still haven't done
Maybe
it.
Ricky will give you a spool.
Snug up to
Okay.
it right and we'll work on it. But the important thing to the straight basting, about every 12 inches, you're doing half your quilt in this direction, flip it around, and now you're going to quilt it in this direction. You're straight basted this way, this way. Start in the middle going here. You're going to go in this direction, then you're going this way and this way.
Okay.
Okay? One thing I want to explain, it's very, very common with old linens. When you cross your lines, you're going to get a pucker.
Ouch.
Keep the puckers in. It's very important. When you get the pucker, when you're going to quilt that part, take your seam ripper or your superior snipper. Rip out a crosshair section. Your hands are on your straight basting when you're quilting. Your little pucker eases in and it stays right there. And this is a very valuable tool, especially when you're working with old flexible linens. This linen, you can see, this is a very white linen, but it's got beautiful white work, embroidery.
And then this, I just love an edge that's finished like this.
Exactly. And a little tip I might pass on is when you have a linen like this, it's almost impossible to find new yardage to match for binding. I'm going to end this here. I'm going to cut this off, cut it up into 2-inch strips, and bind this piece with that, and then I have an exact match.
You are a brave woman, Cindy. Okay. This is, oh, don't you just think this is wonderful? Oh.
All right. Let's
Talk about edging.
Yes, okay, this was what the biggest challenge for me to figure out. The biggest charm to these pieces is the embroidery and the edge work. You don't want to lose that. So you're quilting, quilting, quilting on this piece, stop within 1 inch or 2 of the edge.
Okay, like right in here? Yeah.
Right in here, so I left this open on purpose. Stop. We have all this edging, our batting and our backing, little scissors. We're going to take little scissors.
Well, look at these, because I've not seen these before. It's a sharp little point and then a blunt end on one side. Yeah, those are pretty awesome.
Very cool. They're one of my favorite pairs. And you're going to take your batting and you're going to trim it exactly to the edge of your crochet. You're going to trim your backing at least a 1/2 inch bigger. If you have curved ends, clip it.
All right.
Now, you're going to take this fabric, fold it over upon itself. Do not put your backing fabric over the top of your batting, because when you lay this over the top, you're going to have a dark ridge.
That's
that you can
exactly
see
how I
through the
would have
linen.
done it. I'm serious, you know, because that's the way we're taught to do those.
I've done it a couple times.
Okay.
I learned the hard way. And then you just whip stitch your edge down. That's how you finish the edge. I recommend that you do a stay stitch against your embroidery.
All right.
That makes it lay flat. And then you can finish your quilting up to the edge.
Now you have another nifty trick as far as if you don't have stuff you can cut off of the piece that you're working on, extra
Exactly.
fabric. I mean, this binding on here, obviously this is your class example, it exactly matches the linen. It has the same look to it.
But yet it's a different, totally different piece. What I do with old pillowcases or tablecloths that are badly damaged that you can't use, cut them up into 2-inch strips. And
There
I
you go.
take that and I bundle them up, put them in a bucket. When I'm ready to bind something, I just pull it out, I match it up, and so you're able to use every part.
I just think this is wonderful. I mean,
New
really.
yardage doesn't have the patina that the old stuff
And
does.
I know my mom is going to especially love this show because she's saying, I don't know what to do with all these old linens. Well, you're after me on the list, okay? Now, what if you have something that's kind of, wait, which is the top and bottom?
You always look for the good side. I think this is the good side.
Oh, that's just pretty disgusting that they both look pretty good. Anyways.
All right, these are very common to have pieces that have the tightly scalloped edges, and there's no way I'm ever going to hand whip stitch that edge. I jump off the porch.
Okay.
So you can take care of this 2 different ways. You can take the scalloped edge piece, put it on another piece of fabric, stitch it down, and quilt it. Easily done.
Okay, now we have another. Now you say you would never do it, but yeah, right, here it is, it's going on.
But I can't take credit for this.
Oh, okay.
One of my linen ladies, one of my students, Jody Ort, she came up with this technique for my book. And she's discovered that if you have a piece like this, quilt again up to within a couple inches of the edge and stop. You are going to trim your batting exactly to the edge up to your stitching.
Okay.
Then I like to use the Superior Threads bottom line thread, and we should probably
It's a polyester. It's Libby's.
thread.
It's Libby's thread.
Libby's thread. I love that thread on my linens. It blends in. And I stitch right up to the edge
With
that
Libby's thread.
With Libby's thread,
Okay.
and I have Charlotte Ware Anderson's her fusible web in the bobbin.
Oh, okay.
all
Explain
together.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. 1,
This
2,
is
3.
cool.
Oh.
So what you do is after you have stitched this with your batting gone, there it is, you iron it. A few seconds, that fusible web bonds, then you go back and you trim your backing right along that, and then you finish quilting up to the edge. And
You
it's
know,
wonderful.
What did Grandma do in the olden days? Okay, here we go.
This is another good example. This is where I learned to work with these difficult edges. And this is one of the most difficult edges to learn on. And it would have been a shame to cut that off.
Yes.
And all I did was I trimmed my batting and backing just like I showed you, turned it under, whip stitched it, and this shows you how it comes out. And I used old vintage fabric for the back of that.
Oh, this is just great. Now, you play when you get at the sewing machine, and I just absolutely love this. Here we have, you're scribbling.
I break the rules.
We like that here. Okay, tell us about
Okay,
it.
when I'm teaching design, I always talk about in your quilting designs, there's sunshine and shadow. And in order to have sunshine, you've got to have the shadow. The quilting police tell you stippling and meandering, you can't cross your lines.
Yes, they do.
I know. They've been knocking on my doorstep. And I said, well, you know, that's another sunshine. All I'm getting is another design. I said, to heck with this. So I have crossed my lines and I scribble. And this gives me the shadow to give me my sunshine. And it's very easy to do. When I do my machine quilting, I have fallen in love with these Machingers gloves.
Say that again.
Machingers.
Machinger. Okay.
Fingers
Yeah.
with the machine on.
Don't you get all sweaty and?
No.
Okay.
And I get hot easy. I absolutely hate
And I want to make sure
gloves.
Erin sees it. It's got like little built-in moving.
Rubber tips.
Yeah, rubber tips to move.
Little
Love
moving
it.
parts on your fingers.
Yeah, right.
So this gives you the traction. Your hands don't get hot. You can still change your needle, your threads, your bobbins. You can still feel through them. I absolutely
I'm gonna
love
try
them.
'em.
They're good. So when you do stippling or meandering, the quilting police tell you that you may not cross your lines, but I do. What I do is on my given area that I want to do stippling is I nail it down and I've crossed my lines. Now you don't have to worry about the traction keeping your fabric flat. So now you can go up on your fingertips
Nice.
and quilt as fast as you want to, the faster the better. And you do this as tight or as loosely as you want to. And because you're only using your fingertips, this gives you a lot of flexibility to fill that in. And you just take it right up to your design. And
you know the thing
voila,
that-
and that's all there is to it.
If somebody were a new machine quilter, this actually would be a wonderful way to start.
I teach this in my beginner class. They love it.
Nice.
They learn to break the rules from the beginning.
Nice. And love that. And last but not least, you sign your quilts, as you mentioned.
I do.
And you give quite a lot of care to this.
I did. And this is another one of those, if it's not good news, you put it on the back too. But this particular piece, I got to show you this piece.
Okay.
Okay, I got to share. I get all excited about these. This is a baby duvet cover. I have never, ever seen one. I got it off of eBay, and I bought it for my daughter because
look
it
at
has
them.
her initials. It has Emily Pauline on it.
Can we let me put this down here and see if we can get it right there. And that was there, it came with that?
It came with that, and I set it aside for her for a couple of years. She got recently married, and her husband got his orders to be shipped overseas. And she called with the news, and of course we were a mess, because
Yes,
Ryan's
yes.
just like our son.
Yes.
And so I put all the quilting aside, we pulled this out, and this was my therapy. So this is the signature linen that I chose, and I signed it. This is how I do all my quilts. And it says, for my daughter, Emily Pauline, my heart broke today when Ryan got his orders. Prayers, tears, and my therapy doing this quilt. And I love you.
We will all hold a very dear thought for him.
He's home now. He got home last year.
Yay!
So, but Even though it's a tough memory, it's important to be
You
noted.
know, I just love that your quilts do chronicle your life. They do chronicle all of our lives, and it's so important that we put it on the quilt itself.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, this book is just wonderful. The Whole Cloth Linen Quilts by Cindy Needham. And I want to show you, if the camera can come on here. If you don't know how to draw quilting designs, look at what Cindy is giving you here. On and on and on. And the best part, my friends, for you sitting in the audience today is you will all go home with a copy. So, friends, this is a winner, right? Yeah. Thank you so, so much. And we'll be back. This was awesome.
If there's anything that I've learned in my experience as a quilter, is that quilters give. They're very charitable. I want to introduce you to Rachel Wexler, a multi-prize winning quilter who donates her prize winnings to charity. Take a look.
I'm Rachel Wetzler, and I've been quilting since 1989. My mom taught me to sew when I was a kid, and I've sewed all my clothes for a long time. I've also sewed everything from dolls to draperies, and I did a lot of conic cross stitch for many years. In fact, it was in 1989 that I was looking for a diversion from cross stitch when I saw a pattern in a magazine for this 12-block sampler quilt. I thought, well, I know how to quilt. I know how to sew, and I'd like to make this quilt. So I did, and I tried it, and I liked it. I can't explain it, but I knew this was the big it. This was what I would do for the rest of my life. I do primarily two types of quilts. One is square quilts that are radially symmetrical, where all the elements revolve around an axis in the center. And another type of quilting I do is pictorial, and those are often inspired by either photographs I've taken in my travels or just a concept that I've kind of dreamed up in my mind, and I try to pull elements together to create that vision. Arms of Love was inspired by the movie The Passion of the Christ. I just felt compelled to make a quilt after seeing that movie. And as I was doodling and putting down elements of what I wanted this quilt to look like, it kind of occurred to me that this looks a bit like a coat of arms. So I began to study heraldry, and it was the perfect thing to pull together what I wanted to say with symbolism. So I tried to stay within the historic guidelines of heraldry, and it's my most meaningful quilt. My philosophy of quilting can be summed up in 3 words: create, compete, and contribute. First, I have to create quilts. I don't care if anyone ever saw or liked my work, I have to make quilts. But after I'd quilted for a number of years, I had a growing desire that my quilts be leveraged for something greater than strictly my own personal enjoyment. So I was drawn to competition as a way to share my work with others. And also, it's a personal challenge. There's always in competition that push to go beyond. And besides, I just like to win. And if a quilt does win, I decided to contribute the financial earnings to charity. I have limited my giving to Christian humanitarian organizations. After I've worked on a rather intense quilt like Arms of Love, I just want to play and do something sort of mindless. And that's when I go to my scrap box. And actually one of my quilts, Footloose, was made from scraps. And I just like to take the whole mess and create order out of chaos and make a little quilt out of it. Anything that comes from within you is a creative endeavor, and that whether it's on paper or in fabric. I used to work in data processing, very cerebral numbers kind of a job, and I was good at it, and it incorporated my head and my hands. But quilting pulls together my head, my heart, and my hands. And I think when you get that combination, you got a winning thing going. If someone has been moved in some way by viewing my quilt, then I think I have made the contribution that I was put here to make.
That's excellent. Really wonderful. And I would just like to give a personal message to Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing with us and those wonderful quilts, and thank you for sharing your earnings from your winnings with charitable organizations. That's great.
That is the spirit of quilt making.
It is.
Well, we do have Bad Bart in the audience. We have a ton of questions for you. We've narrowed it down to 2, all right?
Thank you.
Hey ho, everybody. We're standing here today with Tracy from La Vida, Colorado. Tracy, what's your question?
Cindy, do you fold or do you roll your linens for storage? And why?
I fold them, but my real delicate ones, the ones that can break or are already damaged, I do roll them. I take a cardboard roll, put batting around it, and then I roll them on top of that to protect the fibers. But my more durable ones, the standard tablecloths, I just fold them. I put them in a tub with acid-free tissue paper and seal it to keep the dirt away from them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Tracy, thank you. Now we've got Libby from Overland Park, Kansas. Libby, what's your question?
Well, this is for Cindy also. I also have collected linens forever. And I have one particular piece that is a little darker color. I think it might be linen or flax. But a water glass was left on it and left a ring.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been afraid to wash it because if water left a ring, I don't know what's going to happen when I immerse the whole thing. Do you have any suggestions?
How durable is the linen? Is it real delicate, or is it something
No,
you could wash?
It's fairly heavy and durable.
I'd recommend going ahead and washing it in the restoration soap that I recommended, and if the stain doesn't come out, then it's part of the charm.
Okay.
It's part of the history. So the stains and the holes are fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
Today's been a wonderful show, and in the spirit of giving, Cindy has provided everyone in the audience with a little piece of linen, antique linen, to go home with.
how about that? That's great. Thank you for doing that, Cindy.
Thank
Very
you.
gracious of you. It's been a wonderful show. It's been very fun.
Thank you for having me. This has been quite an experience.
I've enjoyed it today, haven't
In
you,
a good
Alex?
way?
Oh,
Yes.
Well, so that's great.
No, it's been wonderful, and of course we love it when Cheryl Uribe comes, the Gizmo girl.
That was a lot of fun.
Oh, they like it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, we encourage you. Do you have a website?
absolutely.
What is it?
Easy. CindyNeedham.com.
Great. So maybe people can find you, and you'll be visiting them in their
They
cities
can
before
find
long.
me there, and I've got my gallery of quilts on there. I've got a slideshow of my students. I'm so proud of my students, so I show them off too.
We are so proud of you, and if you're the new kid on the block, welcome to the club.
Thank
Yeah,
you
that's
so
great.
much.
Okay. Well, it's been a great show. Thanks for sticking around with us. And I'd just like to say, it's
a new day. So I'm in the control room. It's been changed into the SS Good Times. You know, the crew is celebrating Hawaii Day. You would think we were in the heart of Honolulu, but no, we're doing a quilt show. Do you like my little drink? During the show, we didn't get to the fact that you bead your quilts.
I do.
By machine?
No, I do every stinking one by hand. One at a
stinking
time.
beads.
Yes.
Well, this is absolutely exquisite.
This is an old linen that I got off of eBay for $4. It had multiple tears in the side, and I decided to go ahead and put it on top of fabric, quilted the devil out of it. My new project this year is learning to do miniatures, and I'm quilting the miniatures with the Superior's bottom line thread. But I always like to add a little sparkle or something that brings the quilt to life, and I have learned one of my favorite beads for the old linens are the freshwater pearls. I like them because they are irregular, they're not perfect, they give a very soft light to the quilts. And if you look at some of the quilts in detail, the trick I learned to this is after about the 15th time of dumping beads on the floor while I'm trying to pick them up, and I'm madly picking up the beads off the floor with my tape, it's like, duh.
Leave it on your tape.
Leave it on the tape to begin with. So what I do is I roll my masking tape inside out, I sprinkle my beads, pat them down, I stick them to the quilt, so whether I'm traveling on a plane or the car or I'm at home, my beads are stuck to the quilt.
I'm amazed.
Okay.
That's gorgeous.
And now look at this. Look at the sleeve back here. You were talking about this.
Yes.
I think that's just wonderful.
That is the other half of the linen that I showed that was so badly damaged because it's all falling apart down here, but I couldn't throw it away, so that's the rod pocket.
Very good.
All right, now here.
This is a pillow sham, and I like to show this. This is your favorite red work.
Okay, let me hold it. There.
There we go.
Got it. Okay.
There we go, and I have shown off the piece. I have put my quilting underneath. This is another design technique I talk about in my classes, is putting the over-under. I've done around all of the embroidery to pop the embroidery. It becomes part of the fun thing about the back of this, with this being a pillow sham, is I took off the buttons, I folded open the flap. Thank you, thank you. And then quilted it. When I was done with the quilting, I added the buttons, and this now becomes my rod pocket. But you got to check out the signature linen, Alex.
Okay, it says. Did you know this?
I did.
No, it's a surprise to both of you.
It says, made especially for Alex Anderson. Thank you for my wonderful day. I knew you liked red. Oh my gosh!
So that one's yours.
I have to say something because I know that every time you look at quilts in magazines, or even if they're looking at them on our show, there's no way to truly see how incredible they are. You all know this, right? This is even more so. There's so much incredible detail on these quilts. I'm thrilled and amazed with this. So I hope that if anybody ever has the opportunity to see you or see an exhibition of your quilts, man, they can do what I've been doing. They can get their magnifying glass. It's really special.
Thank you. Well, I've got one more to show.
Okay.
This one, and I broke
Can I
some.
go like this?
Yes, I
Okay.
broke some major rules on this because it was a special piece. But this is the bottom end of a dresser scarf, and it's my favorite type of linen, which is the drawn thread work. And do you recognize the quilting design?
I recognize the quilting design as
meant-
being
yes.
this right here.
So I got on your
Dad's Own
website,
Star.
downloaded it, shrunk, enlarged, with the proportion wheel, got everything the way I wanted it.
I think
So
there's
that is
something you
for
need to read.
Oh,
And so
made
that's the
especially
best.
for Ricky Timms. Thank you for my wonderful day. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow. Oh.
Look at this too.
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at this.
So that's just an old piece of lace. This one just happened to be the right size, trimmed it down a little bit, put some fray block on it, and then signed it.
We
So-
have to say that this is not a requirement to give the guest.
But it doesn't hurt. Cindy, thank you so
You're welcome.
so
And then these were
much.
blocks for your quilts.
Oh.
I was lucky enough to find two pieces that absolutely match because I didn't want any fights.
Explain this. Explain this. Well, explain this. Yeah.
We do ask as an optional thing for our guests to give us a little 6-inch block that we can someday put into us, well, 2 blocks.
Because
that-
so we
So there's
wouldn't
no
fight.
So we
Pearls,
wouldn't
yeah.
fight over the quilt in the end. And so they're not usually quite this wonderfully intricate. I mean, but they always represent the guest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I knew it had to be a linen to represent.
Okay.
Thank you. That's been
It's a
great.
good day here
It is
in
a
La
good
Vida,
day.
Colorado.
Thank you so much. It's been
You're
fun talking
welcome.
to you. Good to meet you.
Good to
That's
meet
been
you,
good.
too.
And I'm sure it's been something fun that all of our people have just...
And I know you better keep your passport current and your bags packed.
That's right. So
Thank you, Alex.
you're welcome. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Ricky.